Well, that was strange. I had something knock me off on my live stream. It doesn't look like I have the best connection, and I'm not sure, so we'll see if we can make it through today. See if we actually will have a difficulty if the screen keeps freezing. I hope it doesn't. Um, Sometimes my internet does do that. So I see that 2 of you are in the house. I'm really grateful that you guys are here. I appreciate you coming. Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zarim Tovim, and Laila Tov to those of you who are choosing to enter into our chat today to see what we are going to be discussing. If you guys are on Facebook, if you are joining us Facebook, I don't even know if it's going to be doing that or not because I popped in and out and it may not show up on Facebook. And if it doesn't show up on Facebook, I'll have to go back and post when we're done. So I'm going to wait just a few minutes here. How are you guys doing as far as is it coming through? Are you being able to see this well enough? Is it being um, is it having trouble streaming? So if you guys can, whoever is in here, I only see that there's two of you with me right now, but if you could type on the comment section and let me know, or whoever, if you want to remain anonymous, I understand that as well, because I know I have people who watch anonymously. But if any one of you three that are in here would let me know how we are doing, if the streaming quality is okay, because it did knock me out earlier. And, it may not. Okay, good. Thank you, Christopher. I'm glad that you're in the house. Wonderful. I'm hoping that more will join us. This one is going to be another long one. I'm hoping it's not going to take as long as it did last time because 2 hours was a long time for me to chat. But I did kind of want to address something. Um, I had some feedback on something that I thought was really interesting, that it came back my way, and describing that what Ken and I are sharing. Yeah, I know my camera isn't the best quality, and that's a bummer, but I only can do with the equipment I have. This one, the camera isn't the best quality on my computer. But I'm glad that you can hear me. So eventually I'll be able to invest in a different camera. But for right now, this is equipment I have to deal with. So it's really more about delivering the message. I don't need to have people see me clearly or not. Um, so what I wanted to address was that some feedback had come back my way that we were actually a cult. And I was really shocked to hear that because, we are not gathering anybody. We don't want to gather anybody. I'm not looking to, A, be put on a pedestal. B, I'm not looking to create a new religion. C, it's not my heart. It's not my heart to collect people, neither my husband. I mean, we felt the Holy Spirit said, you guys need to share what you have been discovering. And we were told to hold off until we had pretty much 5 years under our belt. Hi, Claire. Hi, Greg. Good to see you. And so we have, Christopher, that's funny. I love cult. Ah, so what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to share the definition with you because I found it really interesting to see the etymology of this word. I like to see etymologies because really the English language didn't actually finally formalize until the 1500s. So when we look at things and we use words and to define certain things, knowing that English was not settled, and it's still not settled. Words continue morphing. I mean, the word for thong when I was a kid versus what it means now today is completely different. You know, Thong in my realm when I was a kid was the flip-flops I would wear when I would go outside to play in the summertime. And we know that, it's changed its meaning. There's many words that have changed their meaning. I remember the first time I heard somebody say, "Wow, man, that's sick." I was like, "What?" And he meant it as a positive thing. And I'm thinking, okay, the word sick means ill, something that's not good. But yet it was being used to describe something as amazing. And the English language confuses me. That's all I've got to say. So, in having said that, I want to be able to define what the word cult was, because we should be able to see where this came versus where the definition is today and where the roots of it were. again, English wasn't finally established until 1500 and based on many loan words. So, any rate, I will go and pull up my document so we can go over this together. Okay, here we go. So, in the 1610s, cult, worship or homage, and this idea of this word is now totally obsolete. We don't use this. In the 1670s, I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger for you guys because I know if you're watching on your cell phone, it's going to be awfully small. Okay, let's go back here. So so in the 1670s, it was a particular form of or system of worship. So even back then, Christianity would have been considered a cult. And then in the 17th century, we have care, labor, cultivation, culture, worship, and reverence, originally tended and cultivated, and to till. So this was the roots of the word cult. So then it was revived in the 19th century with reference to ancient or primitive systems of religious beliefs and systems, especially the rites and ceremonies employed in such worship. So even in the 17th century or the 19th century, a cult could have still been applied to Christianity. And then in 1829, the extended meaning is devoted attention to a particular person or thing. So that still could have been considered Christianity a cult because of its devotion to Jesus, to Yeshua. Now, in 1993, Hugh Rawson wrote in a book called Wicked Words that a cult was an organized group of people, religious or not, with whom you disagree. So, and I know that, I mean, in reference in something that came back to me, I was totally shocked about, I could see that using this word because even in Christianity, when I was in Christianity within the church four walls, we did this all the time. Anybody that we didn't agree with, we called it a. But as you can see, that is not where this word originally stemmed from. And so I wanted to be able to bring that to the surface so that we could talk about it because that is not what Ken are doing here. All we are doing, we have found within the sacred languages themselves without having like outside sources dictating to us what we are sharing that has been spirit revealed to us. So we haven't gone anywhere to try to get somebody else to share with us how we are looking at the languages because the Holy Spirit's revealed it to us. So I just wanted to kind of put that to rest that the word being used today means using it to describe a group of people or persons that you disagree with. And I'm okay with people disagreeing with us and what we're sharing. Yes, I did call us a cult. It I started chuckling on it. I was like, "Oh wow, okay, that's interesting." So that's why I wanted to clear up what that word is because that is certainly not what we're doing. Like again, we are not trying to collect people. You know, I don't even think Yeshua was trying to, and what people would also call as Jesus, that Yeshua or Jesus was collecting people. He was trying to teach a way to raise people up into sovereignty. Wouldn't have oppression from religion or oppression from the Roman government, that they'd be able actually to stand in autonomy in oneness unity. Because, even the religion at that time was all about dividing. And the same thing with the Roman government. They were about dividing and conquering. So, Yeshua was a radical. Jesus was a radical in his day. And so, in a lot of ways, we could probably be seen that way as well, because we are not conforming or coming under. We are raising up into a sovereign stance spiritually. So, Lisa, I'm happy to have you here. I'm really thankful that you popped on over to say hi. By the way, your smile is totally infectious. Every time I see you smile in your photos, it just warms my heart. So I'm glad that you're here. And Anyway, Jamie, it's nice to see you popping over here too. So, what I wanted to discuss also, the second thing is that everything that we are discussing here is spiritual principles. It's within analogies. There is nothing that we are sharing that has to do with physical activities other than in how we orient ourselves with people. Meaning, I'm going to treat somebody kind because I want somebody to be kind back to me. I mean, do as to others as you would have done unto yourself. So, everything that we're talking about is metaphorical, analogy, symbolic, spiritually speaking. There is not anything that we are talking that is inappropriate physically. That is not what we are discussing at all. And so, because of that, again, I felt like I needed to clarify that because, it can be perceived as being something other than what we are actually speaking about here. And the third thing I want to say is that we aren't telling anybody anything. I am not going to tell anyone what to do. I'm not going to tell anyone how to see. I'm not going to tell anybody that they have to do certain things. We have all been given the ability to choose while we are here in our life experience. Spirit is taking on us on our own spiritual journeys for maturation. So, what I'm doing and what I'm sharing is based upon the path that I'm on. What my husband shares is based upon the path that he's on. And we are coming together sharing this information so that we can begin having discussions about it. But I am not going to tell anybody that they are wrong for doing things a certain way. And because that's, if we try to bring correction to somebody and tell them that they are wrong, that is service to self. And in actuality, that is lower vibrational frequencies in the system of duality between this and that, right and wrong, black and white, good and evil. It's all about opposing and dividing, which we need when we are younger and we are in our lesser vibration in the spiritual place of lesser maturation. What would be considered the milk of the word is we need to see the system of duality to compare. And that's all we're doing. So, what Ken and I are sharing is a mature message. And again, I'm not separating out to tell people that they're immature. That's not for me to do. I just know that where we are at, and I know what Paul is writing about, is he is writing to the mature audience, the mature in the process of spirituality, not on the milk of the word, which would be the 0 to 12 in spiritual maturation of mother teaching, and then father teaching the deeper things that are actually hidden away from the spiritually immature because they're not ready to handle it. They're not ready to see because they are still in the system of duality and they need to be in that place in their sharing. So, I wanted to clear that up because that is definitely not what we are doing. I'm just sharing with you what the Spirit has shared with me through my excavation of the language. So, hi, Liz. Good to see you. Let's go ahead and jump into what Paul is saying. I know if you guys saw my thumbnail, you are seeing the scripture that we're sharing today. I am not going to go into review. This is already going to be long enough, and we're already at 15 minutes. And so 2 hours yesterday was a little much. I even had people, I think Greg was saying, okay, yeah, I'm done too. Stick a fork in me, I'm done. So, what we are going to be talking about today is that we were discussing that the occult things, the hidden things, yesterday were for those that have matured. So now we're going to move into the next verse. Let's go all the way down. We went through a lot yesterday. Okay. I decided to show, I'll try to increase it here a little bit, but it's a little difficult because of the way that I've got it laid out. So just hear me read these verses to you. Is anybody getting sick yet because of all the scrolling I'm doing? Okay, so I decided to throw up three different translations based upon people where they are or where they were at when they were translating this. So we know that the King James Version was through multiple people that came together. through King James that wanted to have the Bible to have. How do I say this? So actually, I'm not going to even go in there. That's a whole different topic for another day. So we're going to just look at these translations, and the one that I really wanted to focus on was Janet McGear's work, because she spent the most time in assembling all of the resources from Aramaic. But Etheridge, Dr. John Etheridge, which was the first to begin to translate the Aramaic scriptures, this is what he had to say. For when they knew Eloah, which is the Aramaic word for God, they did not as Eloah glorify him and appraise him, but became vain in their imaginations, and their heart was darkened, that they understood not. Now King James said, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Then we get to Janet McGear's work, which, if you want to check out her work, her resource books are fantastic. She's under Light of the Word Ministry, and I use her resource material explicitly, as well as using John Klein's. Well, I'll show them to you in a minute, but the Hebrew etymology, it's the big red book. I use those actually more than I even do the Strong's Concordance. So Janet McGear said, because they knew God and did not glorify him as God and gave thanks to him, but rather they became fruitless in their reasonings, and their heart without understanding was darkened. Now notice how I highlighted this. Notice how flipping the words around changed it. And their heart without understanding was darkened versus their foolish heart was darkened, or their heart was darkened and they understood not. Completely different way, taking the words and flipping the order so that the meaning would change. So what's going on here? That's why for me, I want to study the sacred languages so that I can see what's going on and what the Spirit is sharing with me. Because if we follow what another man or a group of people, such as those who put together the King James Version, say, we are going to see that the heart is foolish and it was darkened because they were given over, they were vain in their imaginations. Okay, then we're not even talking about reasonings here, or their heart without understanding was darkened, or that their heart was darkened and that they understood not. So enough about beating that one up. Let's start going into to see what's going on here. I will increase the size a little bit more here to 200, and I will just use my slide bar because I think that's going to be a little bit easier. Thank you, guys. I haven't had anybody say that I need to make it a little larger than this. It would be more challenging if I make it any larger, but hopefully we can work together on this. So the very first word, because we shared this yesterday, that this word also has the meaning of use parables, speak in parables, and compare. So we already know that this is a verse that is dealing with duality, because if it's in comparisons, this or that, black or white, right or wrong, right, then we are knowing that we are dealing with a comparison, and that there is the context of speaking in a parable, which is meant for the mature out, so that the immature are being protected because they are not ready for some of these deeper teachings yet. They haven't spiritually matured enough. You know, I mean, you think about raising your children in the natural. There are certain subjects that you wouldn't be discussing with your children if they were a toddler or a child, that you would be discussing when they became a teenager. That's just in the natural. So Paul was highly spiritual. And so he's writing to a mature audience, but understanding in the milk of the word that it's really going to have comparisons going on here. But it is meant for those who would be able to dig out and see these parables, just like we're digging out the foolish and the wise virgins, and we will be going into the wheat and the tares as the next subject. We're digging these things out. So in the root of this word, this is in the static form. So this is in the kinetic or in the potential energy, not the kinetic form. This is just letting us know when we look at the letters. Again, if you don't look at the letters and you don't look at the meanings of the letters, then you're not going to get the fullness of what the word means. So those who are trained up in the language would have already had these. Like wouldn't need to go over the mem and the tet and the lamed because you would already, but this is new to us. So I do need to go over those things. Some of you are learning, and so you already know this and you're going to be able to follow along. But for others, this is new. This information, I wouldn't have had to go over this if we had all been raised in this, in the culture, in the way of worship, of the definition of what cult really meant, of a form of worship, in being able to understand. We don't worship the language. I'm not worshiping the language. The language is a roadmap for us becoming and maturing. So what is this saying right here? Well, we have mem lamed that has a tet in the middle. So mem lamed means to be full. And if you look at etymology, you can see that even mel is connected to the word honey, mellifluous. It's a shortened form of honey. So I'm sure those of you who are familiar with the Bible and scriptures can connect that to many things. But what we are talking about here in the Hebrew and the Aramaic language, this means to be filled up. And to be filled up, get that notice out of the way. It says there's a tet on the inside, and this means to wrestle. You are going to wrestle with the seraphic message while you are surrounded in the mud of the world. Because remember, mankind, again, analogies made from the dust of the earth, water and dust make mud. So, living water teachings, that's what the mem represents. We are going to be wrestling with these living water teachings while we are surrounded and quarantined in this world, because it's meant to teach us and to instruct us. It's going to cause some stirring on the inside. We're going to be wrestling with it. And so, any of us who have a lot of the indoctrination in the system that we were raised in, if we were within Christianity, are going to be wrestling with these mature messages. For sure. I did. And so those who do wrestle with it, I completely comprehend. But this is already telling us that that's what's going to happen. Then we get into the word to know, known, and recognize. The root of it is yod, dalet, ayin. Now, this is experiential knowing. And I have shared that before, and I think it has been taken out of context in what I was sharing. This is spiritually experiencing, experiential knowledge spiritually. And so when we look at the Aramaic, and again, through inculcation, the Hebrew teaches the divine masculine, the Aramaic teaches the divine feminine. Mother raising a child up from 0 to 12 in the spiritual maturation process, which would have been done in the natural, is teaching the divine masculine linear function so that the child can be raised up to become spiritually accountable. It's called the age of accountability. Sons and daughters of the commandments. You would have known this term at the bar mitzvah and the bat mitzvah in day Hebrew, but that's not what I'm talking about here. This is mother raising us up in the language and being able to see the linear fashion, the aleph through the tav, and being able to see it in our outward orientation of how we are going to respond to others that are around us and how we are going to rightly align ourselves to God, to a deity that is over, outside, and through us, because you cannot tell a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old that they are God. That is why actually when kings were put into place and they were immature and they were they were immature in their maturation process, things would go awry because the power was too much for them. They weren't ready for it. They didn't mature. So father or mother's teaching takes us to a place where we can then be in the place of accountability to enter in as the betrothed, as set apart. Again, this is spiritually speaking. I am not talking about a physical 12-year-old that is being betrothed to their father in the natural. I am speaking of the spiritual maturation of learning from father's teaching that is given to the mature that are set apart as the bride. I'm hoping that people are connecting with that. So what this is sharing with us in the Aramaic side of it, so in the linear fashion, The linear fashion in Hebrew is to know, he knew how, learned how, he perceived, observed, considered, be acquainted with. It is a euphemism for intimacy because they would choose to use more discrete words. And was made known, became known, assigned, appointed, informed, knowledge and expertise. So there's a lot here, but this word yada is the same that would be connected to gnosis in Greek. This is experiential knowledge. This isn't something I read in a book, so therefore I know it, which is a Greco-Roman mindset. It would be, I learned to ride a bicycle because I learned how to do it, so I'm going to tell you that I know how to ride it because I did it. Greek, Hebrew, Greco-Roman would say, I read a book how to ride a bicycle, and so I know how to do it. But you've never experienced it. This is the experiential knowledge. In the Aramaic, right? In the Aramaic, the divine feminine is to be made known and be evident, be well known, recognized, and acknowledged. So this in the Aramaic is saying that it is known. It's going to be made evident who has experiential knowledge and who does not. And what else do we see that has been added? So the root of this word, so this is not in the potential energy, this is in kinetic. This means it's doing. This word is now a verb. It is full of action. So what is going to be evident? What is going to be evident is those that have the experiential knowledge are those who went through the door of mother's teaching, AKA went through the door that opened the revelation up to you, which if you want to connect it to, and should, Jesus and Yeshua, that Yeshua opened the door to this revelation so that we could go on the inside to where the kingdom is where we are manifesting. And it means that find where we are weak, feeble, and lean so that we can deliver ourselves from it. So you have to go through mother first because mother is the right-hand path, which is the path of light. This is the path where you learn and you are learning to serve other people. Service to others instead of service to self. Left-hand path would be service to self. This is why we go through the right-hand path first. And then we have the Yodalit, which is literally the constituent letters that make up this little symbol right here, the Yod. But this means the hand, the work and deed of the hand, the power, the means, and the direction that we would know, and the fountain within the larger picture and the purpose of why we are to have experiential knowledge so that we can be connected to Father, spiritually pierced, meaning connected in a way that is changing our nature, rising up out of our beast ego nature into a place where we've tamed our ego, and this is power under control. This means that you've taken the power of ego, it is now under control, and it's in meekness. So hopefully you guys are with that. And so there's a level of being appointed for this, being able to perceive and know. And again, in the Aramaic, it's saying that it is going to be made known and be very evident of those who did go through the door of mother, went through the teachings, were delivered in their weak and feeble position of the beast ego, and are standing in meekness as they've connected to the Father. And that's interesting because the very next word is to know and known and recognize, and then we have God. But if you guys remember, if you have any concept of the Hebrew letters at all, you can see that there's something very different about this form right here. And before we talk, I'm going to pop out really quick and just see how we are doing. If we have any questions. Ladybug, it's good to see you here. Brandon, I'm glad to have you here as well. Lou, my fun lady friend, you are hysterical. I'm glad to have you here as well. So I don't see any questions so far. That's good. If you guys have any questions, please uppercase. I just was scrolling through to see if I had lost any of you guys, and it looks like we're doing pretty good. So now we're going to move into talking about God. So again, being made known, those who went through the door of mother's teachings, aka through Yeshua, because Yeshua was a teaching shepherd of his day, and he was teaching his disciples. And we are getting to see these things today, to see what he was teaching his disciples. And when we look at the word God, there's a lamed added on front of it. You would never see this in English. They would choose to leave that out. This is a shepherd's staff. This is authority. This has to do with instruction, being taught, and therefore teaching. So when we talk about this, we are talking about comparing those who have the experiential knowledge that are going to be seen as having gone through the door, connected to Father in meekness, have experiential knowledge, have the inward sight, that are now the teaching shepherds that have a staff of authority connected to the Word God. So when we look at the letters, let me go back into the document so I can highlight them. Aleph means strong leader, teaching shepherd of light, that has the revelation of Father and has connected in oneness unity, which is the Mashiach, Christ anointing. And again, it says teaching shepherd of light. So this is meaning that there's a revelation of God. Because again, whether or not you believe something doesn't make it not so. So when we have shared in writings that we are Elohim, again, you wouldn't tell somebody, you wouldn't tell a child that they are God. But when you are dealing with somebody in spiritual maturation, when they've increased their consciousness levels, they begin to see that we are the Elohim, and we are cleaning up our messes. And so this teaching shepherd or teaching shepherds that are coming with the staff of authority, this is saying that they are going to be recognized and being seen as a representation, as a strong leader teaching shepherd that has revelation on the Father's side that are revealed as one. And Hey Aleph means lo and behold. So lo and behold, they will be revealed. And we already went through what the whole word for God is and where it comes from. And in the root of it, talking about the body as being powerful, the body of us individually as well as collectively. A strong body has been pierced in their heart, meaning that they were activated, connected in their heart, and they become a strong leader, teaching shepherd. But over time, that was lost. And so that is why it's important that we have that connecting take place in having our heart pierced, spiritually pierced. So when we then take a look at the next word, moving on, again, because this is also connecting to the priests, which are strong supports. Again, priests are the only role that the priest was supposed to play, and it got way out of hand. The priest was supposed to provide answers to those who would ask questions. And if we connect that to Sheol, which we've shared many times, aka hell, that hell, aka Sheol, meaning the place to ask questions, meaning that you're trying to seek answers, they were to go to the priesthood because the priesthood were supposed to have answers. Well, this is a representation of that right here. So we need to defrag our mind and dump out the things that we have already set in our mind of what the priesthood is, what the priesthood isn't, because in duality, we're going to compare. And, there's always going to be one side that's going to say one thing and then another side that's going to be opposing. So if I say I'm right, the other one's going to say they're wrong. And then if I say I'm right, they're going to say the other one is wrong. This is the way duality works. But when we rise above it, we can see that both can exist at the same time, which is called quantum. That is why the Aleph is a representation of the unified field in quantum mechanics of oneness, because both can exist at the same time. So then we look into the next word and it says no or not. But as I've shared with you before, no or not is really in a place of spiritually when we're not matured. Because again, no and not, you would tell a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or even 8-year-old, you can't cross the road by yourself. Because they stand at, maybe by the time 8, but certainly maybe not a 5-year-old. But, make sure you look at both ways before you cross and then double check, right? So there's instructions that's needed. So whenever we see no or not, we need to look at what the resolve is, because the letter is always going to tell you within the writings, the letters are always, always, always going to resolve the issue. And we see that there's been an added aleph. The root is lamed aleph, and an added vav. So again, now we have connecting to mother, being pierced by mother, being connected to her. Because again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to pierce the beast ego nature so that it can be tamed. Because the beast ego nature is what continues to divide and separate us, and to compare in a ways that are in the spiritually immature place of always dividing in comparisons. So mother has to begin to share the instruction in the way of oneness, unity, because when we're younger, we always see the differentiation of it, because that's what we have to learn in order to rise above it. It's meant to happen and be that way. So when we look at the lamed, so this symbol right here, and the lamed and the aleph, those symbols are constructed through constituent letters. Here's the difference, inculcation I'm talking here. The A in the English alphabet is just an A. The B is just a B. A C is just a C. That is not so with Hebrew and Aramaic. Every letter is made up of additional letters. So their vibrational frequency is within the symbol, and you may not see it, but just because you don't see it doesn't make it not so. So the lamed is spelled lamed mem dalet. I didn't put the Hebrew letters here, but I capitalized it to say that this is the word lamed, and it has a meaning. And here's the symbol that it represents right here. It's kind of half highlighted. Word makes it difficult for me to sometimes highlight it appropriately. So lamed is the rod of the teacher, an authority. To accustom, to learn, studied, put together, compiled, brought together, connected, to teach, was trained, study, and knowledge. So again, the teaching shepherds that have the staff of authority are those that are trained up. They've studied and they have knowledge. And the base origin of this means to learn, to prick, sting, excite, and goad. So mother's teaching, when she is raising up a child and they are not doing something that's becoming, meaning they're acting out in their beast nature, they will be corrected. That is what a shepherd's staff is all about. If you take a look at what a shepherd's staff is used with sheep, is because the sheep are not the brightest of animals and they need to be corrected. It's not being mean, it's assisting. So mother is trying to assist a child so they don't become spoiled and being in a place where the world has to serve them. So they're in the process of learning, because mother and father's job in the natural, plus spiritual mother and father, is to raise us up so that we can diminish the beast ego. Then when we look at the aleph, the base origin of this word means to be linked together, to be connected. So we can see that brought together and connected, that is both contained within the lamed and the aleph. So the word aleph means he trained, was taught, and teach. So we got trained in the lamed as well, and to teach, learn, study, which would then mean that they were taught, was tame and yoked, brings forth thousands. The number 1,000, it also is a representation of one, and part of a tribe is 1,000 people, a family. So this is allowing us to be instructed, but we must be connected to mother first. And we can see that it was connecting to mother and connecting to father both. So mother teaches us humility, and so because really humility is being teachable. If you're not teachable, then you're in the pride status. So if you think you know everything, I certainly don't. I've never claimed that I do. I'm just sharing what has been revealed to me at this point. So we got connecting to father, which is meekness, power under control. And then we have connecting to mother and humility, which is going to teach us how to connect to one another and to be brought together. Then we have the word here that has a lot of meanings. as if, like, even as though, according to, about, because, and how. And we need to see where this is rooting from. Now, the way they wrote it in the Peshitta, when you look at it, it shows that the cough isn't fallen, but that's not the case. They just didn't use the font for it. It is a fallen cough. And the fallen cough, it's a hand that grasps, but it's cough pay. Again, constituent letters, just like I was sharing up here. Cough pay is the hand that grasps hold of the mouth that speaks forth revelation. So in other words, the revelation is coming from a mouth that is speaking it to you. You're grasping a hold of the power, but this is a representation of a cup, a vessel that is needing to be filled. So in this position, the cup is ready to be filled. This is one that is emptying out their cup. Now, when we take a look at this, so again, if we are looking this, because this is really a an issue, this is dealing with Aramaic. So this is telling us that we must empty our cup. But when we take a look at this is really fascinating. When we take a look at this from the Hebrew perspective, as the Hebrew is the divine masculine linear in the creation process, again, when we take a look at the golden mean ratio, we got the sequence, we've got the linear aspects, the form of creation in the natural. We have it in the spiritual as well. So in the natural, no, in the spiritual, when we are talking about the formation of the masculine and the masculine through mother's teaching is dealing with our fallen flesh, because this is where this would be dealt with. So the maturation process is that the noon is removed. And whenever you have a noon, I'm not trying to highlight the yod as well. It's just not giving me the opportunity to do anything other than that. When the noon is removed, it is a highly spiritual issue, not pertaining to the flesh or progeny. This has nothing to do with that at all. This has to do with the spiritual issue. So again, mother is dealing with the spiritual issue or with the flesh issue, so that we can move into the spirituality. Because again, when we are younger, when we are in that place of immaturity spiritually, a lot that we're dealing with in our flesh nature or our soulish nature that mother has to deal with. And these words are also questions like, okay, so how are we going to deal with this fallen flesh? How are we going to deal with this? And this word, if you've been watching Ken's teachings as well, it also means to be nothing or to not exist, a non-entity. This is also the same root word here, used. Now there's other letters added. It's the same root, was, and then Enoch was not. It is the same root word. But in his case, there were two noons added and both of them were risen. But this is the root. So when we are in fallen flesh, we can be seen as being non-existent, a non-entity. Because really, when we are in our fallen flesh and we're in our beast ego, we haven't been made alive yet. So that's why there's questions here. It's like, how are we going to deal with this? Well, we have to deal with this in the morphing of this. The noon has to be dealt with, which means it is a highly spiritual concept that we need to deal with, not pertaining to the flesh, not pertaining to progeny. In other words, our children cannot ride on our coattails. This is something that we specifically need to. So then when we get to Aramaic, what is it saying? We need to empty our cup of the fallen language that has been the power language that has been controlling us, because it also means to yoke. So the alphabet, the English language, alphabet, the alpha language that has been controlling us, this is suggesting, I'm not telling anyone they need to do this. This is the suggestion is you need to empty your cup, because it is through the oneness principle of saying, how are we going to do this? How are we going to deal with this? Well, we need to empty our cup first. We need to empty out of that which hasn't changed us. It hasn't matured us. It's kept us in a lower vibration because the alphabet, the English language constructed in the 1500s in its maturation, which is still developing, is meant to control people, controlling the narrative, where the Hebrew and the Aramaic is about us rising up into our sovereignty so that we don't have something controlling over us, upon us, restricting us. This is to set us free. So when we look at the next word on this, in according to, look at again, now see what we have. So in when I was sharing with you before, we had the lamed, now we have the dalet lamed with the aleph on the end, because here's the root for L. So when we take a look at this, again, we have the door that we must have open for us, this revelation to go inside divine where we are weak and feeble and lean, that will instruct us in our maturation, in how to raise up to be strong leaders, teaching shepherds of light, that will be revealed, lo and behold, they will be revealed as being one with the Mashiach, the Christ anointing that has been activated. And Dalet Lamed, which is actually the root for the symbol of Dalet, because it's Dal with a Tav, it means it's delivering us so we can be marked in the covenant of promise. And the covenant of promise has to do with the double portion anointing of the firstborn, the first fruits. So let that connect too. So Dalet Lamed means a dangling. So there's something that's needing to be connected, it's just dangling there. And so it's already telling us how to fix what's dangling. Well, we need to go through the door of the inner man by having somebody bring this revelation, open it up to us so we can be instructed. And it is showing that we are weak and thin, a poor man, weaker, that is needy, because we need instruction to be able to rise up. Because when we come in, we know nothing. How are we guys doing in the chat room? I can see you guys are chatting, but I just need to see if you guys have any questions so far. No, I don't see anybody has any questions so far. That's great. Okay, let's move on to the word where we, as you can see on here, there's many meanings here. We have promise, glory, commend, give thanks, offer praise. So I'm going to pop back into the document so I can teach it as we go along, share what I have found, not telling you that this is the interpretation fully. This is how I see it as a mirror of the reflection of what's inside of me. As any of you, if you begin interpreting by learning this, it's going to be a mirror reflection of inside of you. So what I see here is that the root in Aramaic is actually Shin Bet Het, the first three letters here. But what they're saying here is in the movements of these letters. But the root, this is incredible. This is incredible. And you would never, ever, ever, ever see this, nor would they want you to know this. To let down, lower, descend, and come down. God, who is descended and has come down. Now, I know that there's probably people out there who would say that that is like the fallen angels, but that is not what this is saying. This is not what I'm seeing. What I am seeing, because I've already dug out the verses that say that we are Elohim. The verse that Yeshua said that we are Elohim when he was talking to the Pharisees. Then the writings say that you are as gods, Psalm 82:6, Elohim. You are a little lesser than angels. Nope, it's not the word angels, it's the word Elohim. And it only means that you're lesser because you need instruction. You don't have what you need to rise up into that position of being the Elohim because you're spiritually immature and you can't handle it yet. So this is saying that those were the strong leader teaching shepherds that were carrying revelation came down. There was a purpose. So if you want to connect it solely to Yeshua, you totally can, because he says in the English narrative that he is the door. So he is showing us, but it also says that we will be doing greater things than he did. He said that. So that means that others would be the door. His disciples were the door for people that went out and shared the message. They were teaching shepherds. So this is coming down, and there is praise and glorify and commend and to give glory for what? The Father's revelation and teachings that give us power. And it's meant to be given to those who give, not take. Those who are in meekness, meaning they connected to Father. They were pierced by Father, not sexually. Spiritually, they were humbled. They became tamed. They have their beast ego nature under control. But we need to see something deeper here. Because so to adore, when we look at the primitive root of this word, it's to address in a loud voice. So if you think about adoration and declaring, to pacify by words. When I see this, if we don't take a look at what's also being found, we're in with these letters, we're not going to have all the information that we need to really comprehend this. But again, Paul was writing to a mature audience that would already have known the letters, would have already seen the words within the words, would have already seen the hidden in there. And he's explaining it and he's writing it to the mature audience that would have this knowing, this knowledge, this experiential knowledge to take them in deeper. What do we have here in the very beginning of this? We have the word shuv, which is related to the word teshuvah, which has to do with repent and forgiveness. And repent just means to turn. It means to turn around. And so what do we have? The fire, the consuming fire of Mother's teaching is meant to deal with our flesh because it's Shin Yud Nun. Her consuming fire in her teachings, again, burning up on the altar, the brazen altar, our beast ego nature, not consuming the whole ego, the beast ego nature. Shin Yod Nun is the power, means, and direction to deal with the fallen flesh, because we just already had that as a question right here. How do we do this? Well, the very next two words tells us how. But then we get to the consuming fire of Mother's teaching, dealing with the fallen flesh, so that we can build our temple through the 222, Bet Tov. Second letter, 22nd letter, Bet Tov. Bat, daughter. Ben, build. Bat, completed. Bet Tov. The two paths of the 22 letters, there's 22 letters in the Hebrew and 22 letters in the Aramaic. They correspond letter by letter. One teaches the divine masculine, the other one teaches the divine feminine. We are to turn away from fear and to build love and find chet, life. Find Chava, the mother of all living, that will bring forth the covenant of promise, the double portion that is given to the firstborn, the first fruits, that enter in through the blood, one blood, Aleph Dam, one blood, unify, bringing life, establishing, bringing the covenant of promise into fruition. And when we look at the root of this, it means to sit down as a judge, ambush and quiet, by implication to dwell, remain, settle, and marry. Turn to life means to forgive and restore. That is what the heart of Teshuvah is from this root, because this is a process that is important when we are marrying in the sacred wedding, the spiritual sacred wedding that Yeshua was part of. The whole parable of the bride and the bridegroom, behold, the bridegroom comes, is those who are willing to forgive and restore. Forgiveness is a very big thing. We first have to forgive ourselves, but we have to forgive others as well, because really it's releasing things that would cause us to have Mother's consuming fire come against us, such as anger, hatred, bitterness, anything that is separating us from one another. If you have it and you're holding it against someone, even if you don't agree with them in what they are sharing, meaning using the word cult, you're to burn that up on the altar. It's okay if we don't see the same way. But if you don't, and if you don't try to restore, to bring as if the offense never happened, then you're going to be consumed by Mother until you turn so that you can build love and find life. Because whenever we're in those lower vibrations, the lesser, the hate, the anger, the bitterness, the malice, controlling, manipulating, it is decreasing our life force. And fear is part of that. So this is meaning, this also means a window, and it means to separate. A fence that separates. Because remember, the very beginning of this word was talking about comparisons and speaking in parables. Those who are on the inside versus those who are on the outside. Because really, bet means inside, het means outside. So when we look at this, there's a consuming fire that is going to deal with you on the inside and the outside. And we need to glorify and give thanks and praise for that process of the consuming fire, because this is what's going to allow us to spiritually marry as the bride. So if you want to be considered the bride, this is the process that we need to go through. How are you guys doing? You have any questions so far? I'm not seeing any questions. That's good. I seriously don't mind questions. Okay, this is perfect. So now let's move on to the very next word. This is, again, so now we talked about praise, glory, commend, give glory, give thanks for the fiery teachings that deal with our beast ego nature on the inside and the outside. And now we get to the word where we're talking about confessing, giving thanks, praise, profess, and promise. Again, I was sharing with you about the covenants of promise, which are given to the firstborn, and the firstborn is always given the double portion of the inheritance. So when we look at this word, I'm going to go back to my document. The root of this word is supposed to have an aleph on it, on the suffix side, but the aleph has been removed. Now you're going to find this very interesting right here. Anyone that is in the lesser narrative, and when I say lesser, I am not judging. I'm not judging anyone. It's not my job to do that. We are to self-adjudicate, and the Spirit is to help us, because if we judge, judge not lest ye be judged. Again, in the mirror of one another, if I am judging you, then that judgment is really a judgment in reflection on me, something that's going within. I'm saying that because in this word right here, we have 3 vowels. So we have connecting to Mother, connecting to Father, and connecting to Source, all Father, where everything originates from. And each of these vowels represent the number 6. So what I'm seeing here is 666. Again, the lesser narrative, taking the English translation, would say that this is awful and that I am promoting something that I am not promoting. Because again, I'm coming from the higher narrative. Because we are to take our carbon-based man and turn things from 666 to 999, which means completion. But we cannot do that because 666 is also body, soul, and spirit. So Mother is dealing with that. We've got body. The soul is where source is dealing with us, because this is really where we're creating from. We are creating from the inside of us, through our heart, through our emotions and our feelings. That's why it's so important to not create egregors through fear and hate and malice. You want to change your reality? Then we need to connect in love. That's the soulish realm. It's on the inside. It's connected to our heart, the inner man. And then we have connecting Father and Spirit. So this is piercing 666, connecting in a spiritual sense to Mother and to Father and to Source, All Father, Creator from above, on high, so that we can flip the nature. So when we look at the root of this is really interesting to see. So it's supposed to be oneness, but the oneness doesn't happen yet until we connect all of these dots. And we get connected to Mother, Father, as the teaching instructors in the spirit realm, and then All Source, Father, Creator, aka Source. And look at what this is. This is Yada. But this isn't the Yod, Dalet, Ein, as in experiential knowledge. This is the feminine form of the word Yaz, the Yad, literally to use the hand, to throw a stone or an arrow out of a way, especially to revere or to worship with hands extended, or to bemoan by wringing the hands. Again, this is in the sense of duality, dependent upon where you are at, because this whole verse is talking about the revelation and the revealing of those. Remember? To be known, to recognize, to be made evident, and to be made known. Those who went through the door, those who connected the Father, those who are these teaching shepherds of light that are going to be, lo and behold, be revealed. This is very much connecting to the wise and foolish virgins of when the teaching shepherds of light are going to be revealed, that there is going to be a place where there is going to be some anguish and wringing of the hands because somebody didn't know they had work indeed of the hand to do. The revelation that is coming, the divine feminine frequency that is coming from Father, from the teachings given to the mature, spiritually mature. The work and the deed of our hand, the power, means, and direction of what we need to do. And it's telling you that you need to connect to Mother, you must connect to Father, and you must connect to All Source Creator, to your heart within you, because this is how we bring forth the oneness principle, because it's Mother's job to begin to share that process with you, unifying you, because this is showing one, the way of one, so that we can have the thousandfold anointing. It's one on the Mother side and it's 1,000-fold on the Father side. Mashiach anointing only comes through Father's mature maturation teaching, given to those who are the bride, aka the betrothed. Becoming the bride in the Hebrew concept doesn't mean that you're married yet. It means that you are the betrothed waiting to be married. And on the day of the wedding, you become king and queen, Melchizedek, a spiritual concept. But you have to have the maturation teachings. And I'm not saying that everybody has to study the language. Many of you have already had this revealed to you. I'm just showing you that it's been written and it's already here as a foundation to slip underneath that which you already know that the Spirit shared with you. That's my purpose in why I'm sharing this, because it's making my foundation sure too, so it can't be shook, because I have experiential knowledge, the yada. And then we move into the 2 and the 4. Now, by itself, it's a lamed sitting out there by itself, and then the hay has been added to it. So again, the rod of the teacher, the authority, one who he learned, studied, put together, compiled, brought together, connected, to teach, was trained, study, and having knowledge through the Father's teaching, the mature teaching, not for the spiritually immature, not from the 0 to 12 in the spiritual maturation, but for those who have come out of or are coming out of the system of duality. And so this is really meant to bring revelation of the Father. And then we get back into Aleph Lamed Aleph, static in nature, which means it's potential energy, not kinetic, but it's very interesting because we have El and we have Lo at the same time. So learning the way of one is the instruction to lead to the 1,000. El is already in this word, and we already went through all of that, of where it comes from. But this is also a principle of the dividing of the pieces, the covenant of promise that was given to Abraham, where the flaming torch, the seraphim messenger, went between both pieces, which is really a representation of the pre-incarnate Yeshua, went through as a teaching shepherd of light to bring forth the covenant of promise, given as mother is a representation as being one, father is a representation of being one, and there's instruction that is joining the two of them together. Because we need to be instructed in the way of one. So one who is one will instruct you in the way of one. So when we look at that, then we can say contrary or otherwise, and then take a look at the next word. Otherwise, you will be empty and void, and what you do will be in vain. You will be fruitless, and what you will do will be unprofitable. That is a huge revelation right there. The instruction of Mother Father in the way of one is so that we don't do things that are vain, making us void and empty as we're doing things that are unprofitable and fruitless. The resolve always, always, always comes from the letters themselves. Always. And again, that's a reflection of who I am when I see this, because I look at the letters and I say, okay, something needs to be resolved here, because things can't be left undone and dangling, Dalet Lamed. Something needs to be connected so that we can bring heaven to earth, connecting heaven to earth, because that's our responsibility as Elohim, to fix our messes. So what is going to help us? Because the root, if this is the root, and the root is Semek Resh Kuf, what do we have here? This is fantastic. Before I give the resolve, let's take a look at something deeper here. So, Aramaic, it means to be vain, be lacking, empty, void, unprofitable, fruitless, lay waste, make void, be destitute. But in Hebrew, as the foundation, it means he combed and carted, he combed and searched, or emptiness and barrenness. So barrenness and emptiness versus he combed and searched. This is a word of duality based upon what we do or don't do. So if we are searching for something, it's going to lead us to something. Or we can stay in a static position and be full of emptiness and barrenness because we're not producing what? We are not producing fruit. So in looking at the word vain meaning producing no results and being useless. Etymology of vain, of course, looking at the etymology because we've got to look at the English language of where it came from. In the 1300s, this word meant devoid of real value, idle, and unprofitable. And it comes from worthless, void, invalid, feeble, and conceited. Empty and void, idle and fruitless, to leave, abandon, to give out. So, meaning conceited, elated with a high opinion of oneself, was first recorded in the 1690s. And then later, or into the late 1400s, it was silly, idle, and foolish earlier. But then they changed it to being conceited, having a high opinion. But it really means to no effect. The only way that one can really truly see this language, or should I say, If you are seeing it, if you're being drawn to it, if Father is sharing these revelations with you, it's because you are in the place of already having been humbled. Because this language humbles me every time I look at it. And I'm not saying that as false humility. I'm literally, there are times I get so moved like this, I'm on my face and I am just crying out because of what it's showing me, of what it's showing for all of us to become up and out of the system of duality into something greater, not being left in our poor and destitute place. So, having said that, so that we're not doing things that are vain and being fruitless and unprofitable, what is the resolve here? Because I'm always looking for the results of the resolve, not being left in my poor and destitute place. So, what has been added is the aleph and the tav and a vav. So, the resolve in being coming fruitless is that you must enter in the oneness principle, starting at the very beginning, hedged in, surround, supported, protected, so that you can complete the journey by the tav on the inside. This tav is now the mark, sign, signature, frequency change that happens when you connect to all Father, all Source, the Creator, not of Mother and Father, the teaching principles that are teaching us to raise up, but this is the tav on the inside, connected as the 13th chakra, which means the vessel is full of ahava, complete love. And they did it through the aleph tav, having it, the language of light and love, surround and protect you and hedge you in and give you the signet ring to raise you up from being poor and destitute so that you can compress light within the circle of time by finding the narrow path between the light and the dark, standing in meekness connected to Father. Power under control. The beast has been tamed. That's a huge revelation right there. And really, this kuf, you're going to compress either light or dark, depending if you go on the right-hand path or the left-hand path. But really, we learn from both sides, and we're to render it clear by finding the narrow path between the light and the dark. And the dark just being that which is hidden from you because you're not mature enough. Or you are mature enough, and that's why you're seeing it. So then we get down a little bit further, which is another sense word of duality. And why do I say that? So we have thought, reason, and counsel here. And that Aramaic is chashav, right here. This is the same word that is used in the teaching series that I did, As a Man Thinks, So He Is. I went through that whole thing to share that, to let us know where we create our reality from. So it means to weave or to fabricate, but it also means to plot or contrive in the malicious sense, but also hence, again, to weave and to fabricate, hence, from the mental effort to think, regard, value, and compute. Now, in the Eastern mindsets, not from the Western mindsets, they knew that thinking, that it was coming from the heart, that it was the source within us, that this is where we create our reality from, because they have actually found that within our heart, we actually have neurons, the same exact things that make up our brain, we have it in the mental part, a heart brain. We have it within our heart. If you go to heart, I think it's heartmath.org, they've done research on that. Bruce Lipton has done research on that. There's many others. Greg Braden has done worship stuff on that. And then who's the other one? I know you guys in the room because I shared something about him the other day. His name is escaping me right now. But all of them already understand this because science has proven it. So this is, again, dealing with the heart issue. And why do I say that? Is because bet has been added on the front, which means inside of you. It doesn't have a resh, which would mean the head. This means inside of you, the center of your being, where the heart resides. So, depending on what you're doing, you are weaving and fabricating in duality. Thought, plan, and art. So even in the art of doing creating or the art of art, I mean, it's thought and plan goes before you create. And we have to think about these and regard them and value them and compute them within our heart on the inside. Now, I think it's interesting that memhet sheen, a Hebrew word, memhet sheen means to make perceptible. And memhet sheen bet is the word that means thinking, thought, and intention. You hear Ken and I speak about intention all the time. This is very important. But because the bet has been added on the front, this is talking about the inside intention. Because out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the heart, the center of your being, you create. That which you think within your heart, that has to do, even with the soul, with your mind, will, and emotions on the inside, is what is creating the reality, your intention. It's not from your head, it's from your heart. And I think it's also very interesting that the first three letters, or the not first three, but the three letters that I'm highlighting here in Gematria, so different order of the letters, but same number total of this word here that we already talked about to make perceptible, is the same word that means oil, anoint, and a measure. A measure of the anointing, which is the root of Mashiach, connected to oil and anoint, aka Mashiach, is Christ, the Christ anointing. So, in this perspective, it's saying that we need to not be thinking with the mind and not the heart, because that's going to be the problem. We need to be realizing that we need to be thinking from our heart, because that's what's on the inside. The living water teachings that are going to bring us life. We find Chava, the mother of all living, by going through the consuming fire, dealing with our fallen flesh that will build us through the 222 path, so that we can then, all of this is added on the suffix side, all of this is Father's teaching, so that we can be built as the daughter, now not the son, but as the daughter, being marked with the Father teaching principle of learning unconditional love, being revealed as those that have his mark, which means they've completed the teachings, that are standing in meekness while they are in their flesh. Because we still have our flesh suits. We're still dealing with this. None of us are glowing yet. None of us has been released from it yet. We're still here. But this is telling us this through the writings. Again, I'm not telling you, but it is telling us, and through my perception of what I'm seeing and the intention that is given there, that we need to build ourselves on the inside. Mother is going to start that process, but it's going to have to take place in the waters of chaos, because until you get into this place of thinking from your heart instead of your head, you're still going to have chaos in your life. Especially because that's where the beast ego wants to reside, up on the amygdala, which is the place of our fight or flight, which then can control us through fear and manipulate us and literally take over our body. We need to pop the next word. How are you guys doing? Do you guys have any questions? I'm just looking. If you guys have any, put them in the caps. No? All right, this looks great. This looks great. So again, if you have questions for me, again, put them in caps, but I'm not seeing anything. So thank you guys for working on this together and commenting and supporting one another. I love it. I love it when we encourage one another, because we need it. And yes, Magdala does mean tower. Hi, David. It's good to see you. It's very good to see you here. Okay. So now we need to go into the next word, because Again, I'm gonna scroll up because remember, we were talking about thought, reason, and counsel, right? Being empty, void, fruitless, and unprofitable. But the way they translated it, that they're vain in their foolish heart, so King James. Let me get my slide bar here if it'll allow me to take over that there. There we go. Became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. But in Megillah, they became fruitless in their reasonings, and their heart without understanding was darkened. So again, in the sense of duality, one or the other, the resolve, and we shared what the resolve is, because I'm always looking for the resolve. I'm never going to be held in the place where I'm helpless, because I know there's a work indeed to do by my hand to help me out of the helpless place. And it is a level of responsibility that we have. We are not to have somebody clean up our messes for us. We are to clean up our messes. Now, when we were spiritually immature, I could see that. But this is a mature teaching for those who are willing to clean up their own messes, because that is what you do when you become mature in the natural as well. You make the mess, you clean it up. You slept in your bed, you make the bed. Don't come changing or trying to come and change somebody else's perspective if you can't take care of your own room, your own temple, and have it cleaned up. So in duality, you can either plot or contrive in malicious sense, or you can compute, value, and regard and reason to make perceptible thinking, thought, and attention that is connected to the oil in your lamp, this vessel, and a measure of the anointing. But you must find life, chet, by turning, shuv, repentance, forgiveness, restoration. You have to have it. Have to. Because it's really about releasing us. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's about releasing us. Because the things that we haven't forgiven, the things that we haven't made an effort to restore, is going to keep us in the lower vibrations, which then would keep things darkened. So let's look at this word, because I just about fell over when I saw this. Whoa! First of all, let me make this a little bit larger so you can see it. So again, when they were putting this here, the font should have been a fallen cough, because whenever the cough is at the end of the word, a cough sophite, it's in the fallen position. So what do we have here? So it's said dark, darken, and darkened, but it's to obscure. And when we look at that, slide bar is being temperamental here. To darken, to keep back, excuse me. To darken and to keep back, withhold, refrain, restrain, and ceasing. This is really fantastic. The reason why that's happening, because again, this should be a fallen cough. What is being obscured from us? And again, let's look at the etymology of obscure. This is very important that we connect to this. Again, English language not being firmly finalized until the 1500s. Dark, clouded, gloomy, dim, and not clear. 12th century. From Latin, dark, dusky, shady, figuratively unknown and unintelligible. Hard to discern from insignificant ancestors. Covered and concealed. So in the figurative sense, not readily understood, not manifest to the minor understanding. And then they were saying in the 15th century, again, when English really was formalized, not illustrious or noted, known to fame. Indistinct, without clearness or form or outline, hardly perceptible, not capable of being clearly seen through lack of light. So what was obscured? The sacred languages. And why is that? Because look what was added. Vav, Aleph, Tav. So in the root, in the static form, life was hidden and obscured. Chet, from Chava, mother of all living. Unless you go through the fire, purify yourself dealing with your fallen nature, but it is still going to be obscured from you if you're dealing with a fallen language, meaning the lesser vibratory language. Because again, through the study of cymatics, I've shared this many times, English does not have a vibrational frequency that affects matter. They have used the alpha language to subject us, to control and manipulate us. And so this is saying those that are in this, that are grasping hold of the power of the fallen language, the lesser vibratory nature that doesn't have a vibration, but has been used to control and manipulate us, the Aleph Tav, the Hebrew and Aramaic language, is going to be obscured from you. It's going to be hidden from you. You must be teachable and humble, connecting to Mother. She's going to teach you the Aleph through the Tav, the sacred languages, and they're going to be hidden to you because you need to be taught them. And of course, that makes sense, right? None of us knew it. I didn't know it. I had to learn it. So it is concealed to those who are spiritually immature. Because if you've been holding on to the English narrative, you're never going to be able to see this, because that is what is holding you back. You need to empty your cup of that which is holding you back, a power that is subjecting you and not setting you free, because it has to do with your heart. That they chose heart, but look what also is here. How incredible is this? Leb is heart, okay? But it also means in Aramaic to encourage, take courage, comfort, take heart, and console. So the Aleph Tav, the sacred languages, are meant to encourage us, to comfort us, to take heart, to console us, because we haven't had what is necessary. But we need to be humble and teachable through the sacred languages, the Aleph, the Tav. There are going to be those who want to study the language. And what is that going to do for you? It's going to encourage you, because it is going to reveal to you authority on the inside, your heart. Teaching Shepherd of Light, which is really the letters. I mean, you have somebody come and help teach you these things, whether the Spirit teaches you, you do your own digging, or somebody else comes and teaches you, to instruct you on the inside, in the heart level, so that it can be revealed to you, the Father's teaching, connecting in meekness, power under control, where He pierces you spiritually, so that you can take courage that there's something that can be done with your fallen flesh. It's meant to encourage us. And again, Leb, the heart, in the Eastern cultures, feelings, the will, and even the intellect, the center of anything, the heart. This is where we're missing this. But again, all of this has to do with duality too, because from the root of this, we're not trying to necessarily build ourselves twice over. We're not building two separate houses in duality. We're unifying it into one temple. This root means to be enclosed, but it means to unheart, but in a good sense, to transport with love, or in a bad sense, to stultify. That is if you are dual in nature, trying to build two houses. We are meant to be unified into one. That is our authority, by building ourselves, our spiritual temple, because Bet is from Bana, which means to build. And because the noon is removed, it means that this is a highly spiritual matter that has nothing to do with progeny, has everything to do with us and what we are doing by instructing ourselves on the inside, the place of where our feelings are, the will is, the inner man. Then we get into the not and the no again, but like I shared before, this is the instruction in the way of one. So if things are not becoming and you are not maturing, well, it's probably because you're still weak or thin, you are lean and needy, considered a poor man and weaker, but this door is coming so that you can go on the inside to find where you are weak and thin and needy and deliver yourself through it, through the instructions that are going to teach you in the way of one that is meant to connect you, so that you can connect to the Mashiach, the Christ within you that needs to be activated. And then we have another word for duality, and you're going to see this here. Before we go in that, I'm just going to pop back out, see if you guys have more comments. I'm looking for any. Yep, amygdala, exactly. And the aleph is in front of it, being unified, not being divided. Okay. No questions. All right, we're doing pretty well. So the last word that we're going to be looking at is the word to understand, to be known. So this is different. So we had yada in the beginning. Now we have another word that means to understand, to be known, recognize, perceive, gain insight, also offend, wrong, cause offense, injure, and be foolish. Okay, when we were going through the other day in our Romans chapter, we actually saw that evil meant someone that brings harm and injures, and it's connected to those who are still on the milk, who are children and infants. Those who have not spiritually matured are going to provoke, offend other people, cause offense, injure, and those are considered the foolish, because that's all self-orientation, self-absorbed, selfish nature for personal gain. That doesn't matter if you injure someone else. But again, the resolve always, always, always comes through the letters. So let's see this system of duality. I mean, you guys are probably already reading my notes here, which is fine, but I'm going to go over them too. That's why they're here. So in this process, this root is Samek Kaf Lamed. And it's the same root for the foolish virgins in the wise and foolish virgins, if you guys have been watching that. So in the beginning, this would make sense in the static form, that in chaos, in the waters of chaos, because mem means chaos, but it's the waters of chaos, it's a mem and a mem sophit. So we have mother entering into her womb, and then the crossover point to father, which is behind mother, the mem sophit. Both of them are risen in nature because they are not fallen. You have to enter in, you've entered into the waters of chaos, so you need Mother's living water teachings. But when they're presented to you, you might be confused, and it might even cause you to act foolish, because the sacred languages are really dealing with the lesser English narrative. But it means to understand, be known, recognize, perceive, and gain insight. But if you are acting foolishly and you are the immature, then you can be offending people. You can cause offense and injure. Again, I really want to be able to put a stipulation on what Ken and I are sharing, because I know that we offend people. We offend people that are in the black and white narrative, especially in the black and white English narrative, because this study is meant for those who are wanting to come up higher out of duality and to mature. And so they could say that I'm causing an offense or offending, or that I'm being wrong. But also, in the sense of duality on the other side, it's being able to perceive and gain insight. So I think it's interesting here when we take a look at what's added. Kaf Lamed means one who is whole and complete. In the Aramaic form, Kaf Lamed has to do with the bride, and Kaf Lamed also has to do with crown. And then we have the Mem Tav that has a smek on the inside. Mem Tav is the word for death. And on the inside, we have that which hedges us in. Now, as we enter into the waters of chaos, we actually enter into death because our flesh suit has an expiration date on it. In our life journey, we will be pierced because this is also a symbol for a thorn that will pierce you, prick you. But in changing it into the positive, it is also the wedding ring and the signet ring. So the living water teachings are going to be that which supports you, hedges you, protects you, and shields you. It is the wedding ring for those who have become the bride that will be given the wedding band of those who are Melchizedek, kings and queens of righteousness, because they found the way of the covenant of promise of the firstborn, the double portion that is going to be given to those who are the bride, who are going to be crowned as queen. And this Samek, this goes both ways, because once you have this, you are surrounded by thorns. It's meant to you. So if you start trying to go out of that which is protecting you, that which is not becoming, you're going to get pierced. And that makes sense, because if I go out of my protection and comfort, which means that I'm probably doing something that's harming somebody, I'm going to get pierced by that. Again, if I punch somebody in the face, they're going to punch me back. There's harm. If I'm breaking the law, in whatever regard that is, even in the natural law in the state of Oregon, there's so many laws, and even the United States, you are going to get pierced. But if you are one that has the signet ring and the wedding band, if those come to try to harm you, they will get pierced. And it's interesting to see the morphing from the Hebrew and Aramaic, because in the Hebrew, it's the seen, not the sheen, Father's fire. And dependent upon what you have in your teachings, in what you were raised with, in the black and white narrative, the English narrative, you might take offense to this, because the very first time this is used, so again, this letter would have the same sound as the Samek, because the dot is on the left-hand side. This is fire of the Father, his consuming fire, meant to make you whole, taming you, yoking you, the vessel that's needing to be filled with revelation to instruct you. This is from Genesis 3:6, where Chava saw that the fruit was desired to make one wise. That's the word wise, and she took. Here's the root of it. It was mother's instruction, the teaching shepherd of light, that was going to give her the revelation of how to walk through the Father's fire so that her vessel could be filled with power from the Father. Well, actually, this is power given on the inside. So this is power from Source, All Father. That is the instruction necessary to make you whole and complete. So again, the lesser narrative is going to say something completely different. And it means to be wise, to circumspect, give attention to, consider, and ponder the instructions that are being revealed to you through Mother. And Yeshua was a representation of that. No one can come to the Father by me, because he was a representation of that teaching. So in duality, both exist at the same time. Hopefully that is making sense to you guys in seeing this. And yeah, I totally agree with this. I haven't been in any mystery schools. I haven't gone through Blavatsky's work. I haven't gone through any of that. I haven't gone through Kabbalah training. I haven't gone through Freemasonry training. I haven't done any of that. I am not connected to any of those things. What my husband and I are sharing is what the languages have presented to us. And again, mysteries are just things that are misunderstood, things that are obscured or hidden to those who are not spiritually mature enough to handle it. Again, you don't give the car keys to a 5-year-old and say, go drive the car, because you're not ready for it. You don't tell an 8-year-old that they are God. You want to see a tyrant? You want to see a little britches walking around the house demanding, knowing that they're God? I don't think so. That's why these things are hidden. And we are only revealing what the language has shown us. I don't have education in anything else. The only education I received is I became a cosmetologist. I learned how to do hair and nails, and I walked away from my business, from my clientele. My husband had a granite business. We walked away from everything to be led into the wilderness of the people so that we could learn, and the Spirit could teach us these languages so that we could share it with you. We have had nobody else teach us except for the Spirit. And we were willing to go wherever the Spirit led us. And that means it challenged the narrative of our Christian foundations, and it shook a whole lot of stuff. It shook us on the outside, it shook us on the inside. That's why we're able to reveal this to you. And again, we're not telling anyone what to do. We are just sharing the revelations because Spirit said it's time to share these things, because we've entered into the age of Aquarius, the water bearer, that is bringing light and love to the people that we so desperately need. I love you too, Lisa, a lot. I'm very happy for those of you who hung out. I know I only have 7 in the house right now, and that's okay. Anybody can come back and look at these teachings, but we're going to get into some deeper water as we progress. But this one needed to go out so that we could see, not King James wrote, but what was written, what Paul was trying to give to a mature audience, not ones that live in duality, that try and divide, but those who are wanting to come up higher, to unify and to build through love. The things that were obscured that are now being revealed in the time of Gileana, the revelation, the apocalypse. All that means is that we're in the time of the revealing, the spiritual path. Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that. It has cost us much, and it continues to cost us much. And some of our deepest, I'm not going to say wounds, because I'm not wounded anymore. In fact, I'm very thankful for the people that are coming against our message, because it really allows me to see the place where I've grown and healed. But we knew it was going to come from the church, that it was going to come from that black and white narrative, the English narrative, because if you haven't come up and out of that a little higher, because even the book of Revelation, it says, come up higher. Come up higher. We knew that our deepest persecution was going to come from the church. And that's okay, because I've learned a great deal, and because I was once there myself, and I did it myself. I totally did it myself. I judged wrongly, and it hurt me and it hurt other people. So now I'm just coming across and sharing what I have through the revelation given to me, because I love everyone right where you're at. And if you choose to judge me, I'm okay with that, because I was there too. And I learned a lot from it. So thank you for your attention today. 15 minutes short. Greg, I'm going to post this. If you guys want to learn how to do this, the best thing that you can do, I'm still working on the teachings, but there's a lot in my personal life that I'm needing to orchestrate and figuring out how I'm going to give these teachings to you guys, because it's not going to be on the YouTube platform. It's going to be on a different platform. I'm not going to put these teachings out there, because I have too many people that are wanting to take the sacred writings and twist and turn them into something that they are not, something that is making it very common and profane, something that is beautiful. So if you want to start to get ready, because I'm going to need to have people entering into the class that have the basic meanings of the paleo letters. You need to be able to identify the shapes of the letters, and you need to know their basic paleo meanings, knowing that, like, the aleph is the strength, leader, strong, ox, bet, tent, house, inside, gimel, gather, assemble. You need to have those basic understandings. You can go to Jeff Benner's website, Ancient Hebrew Resource Center, I believe that's what it's called. But if you look it up, Ancient Hebrew Resource Center, I'll put a link in the description box once this posts. You can go there And he has all the resource material. You don't have to buy his books, but if you want him as a on-the-shelf reference material, fantastic. My stepson Jesse has them, and they are great. They're wonderful. You can start learning that, because when I go into those teachings, I'm not going to be teaching from that basic level. So people have to have that foundation. Make flashcards, be able to put the symbol, and I use the modern symbol, but if you want to put the modern symbol plus the paleo plus the pictograph, all three of those, David Macias did something really wonderful in sharing about why the letters Horus and the ram and the why the language changed. I don't have all of that memorized myself. It was a great revelation that David brought, and I really appreciated that greatly. But in the modern Hebrew, I am going to be teaching through the modern Hebrew. And because of the modern Hebrew, I mean, because that's where all the resource material is. So all of the resource material shows the modern Hebrew, whether you're going to go into Bible Hub or the Peshitta. And then if you want to learn the Aramaic, I'm still learning it, but I have resource material that shows both. It's because I know the modern Hebrew. That is what you're going to need to do to get ready for the classes, because that's where I'm going to start teaching from, is from an audience that already has that as a prerequisite. And you can do that on your own. We made flashcards. It made it so much easier for my husband and I. And then we can take you into the deeper water. Really, on our YouTube channel, as it is right now, you would know how to do what we do. We've shared enough information. That's a lot of videos. That's like 500 and some videos. But it's all there. And you could skip the inspirations if you want. That was just stuff that was received in meditation, my personal meditation time. But all the other teaching videos share enough to show the movements of the letters, the meanings of the letters, the deeper meanings of the letters. You could learn just by going through all those videos and making notes. But for those who want to have it more streamlined, I am going to do it, but it will not be on this platform. Bring some of that stuff later. So thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Trey. I totally understand. Yeah, I comprehend that. But again, that's why I did that definition at the very beginning of what cult really meant. Not what they made it to be, but what the original intent was, because Christianity was a cult. It was a cult. So I love you. I love your struggle, and I love that we're all in the same place, as we are what I consider as the brave ones. And I'm not saying that pridefully. I'm saying that in our bravery, in our willing to challenge the narratives, we're willing to come up a little higher. I've even been called a heretic before. But in reality, we kind of are, because we are going against the teachings of the Church of Rome and its daughters, because we are seeing a more excellent way to unify us instead of divide us. And that's what Paul is trying to get across. And we are going to get into those things when we get deeper in, all the way down to verse 32 in Romans 1. So thank you for joining me today. I do truly love all of you. I love even those of you who are struggling, because I was there. I have empathy for you and sympathy in the journey, because I had to go through it as well. So thank you. Thank you for all of you sharpening me and raising me up as well to become a better person, just for knowing you, regardless of what side of the fence that you choose to be on. I still love you. Thank you for sharpening me.